I am super excited for you to meet Dr. Deborah Gilboa. She is known as Dr. G. She is a resilience and stress expert who appears regularly on the Today Show, Good Morning America, The Doctors, and more. She's also a frequent contributor to outlets like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Huffington Post. And her message is straightforward and essential. Do stress better, be resilient. Now, here's what you should know about her. She is a board-certified attending family physician in Pittsburgh's Squirrel Hill Health Center, where she cares for diverse patients from more than 100 different countries who speak more than 60 different languages. She's a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and Carnegie Mellon University. And folks, if all of that doesn't legitimize her as a stress and resilience expert, how about this? She is doing all of that while raising 4 boys. Now, we're going to bring Dr. G on screen here in just a moment, but the first thing I want to have you do is to watch this 2-minute video from her that she has put together describing what she calls the resilience cycle, which I think is going to be a powerful roadmap for how you can help your teams navigate change. Have a look.
Every change causes pain. No matter what we experience, good or bad, the very first thing our brain does is ask, wait, what will I lose? Loss is actually the first step in the resilience cycle. Yes, there really is a process to becoming more resilient. I'm Deborah Gilboa, and I created the Dr. G Resilience Cycle, which is free for download right now, right next to this video, to help you get through every change you face and incorporate that experience to become the person you want to be. I've helped thousands of people around the world become more resilient at work, at home, and in their families through TV appearances, social media, and speaking engagements. And now I want to share 6 steps so you can become more resilient no matter the dilemma or the change in your life. After that first step of experiencing loss, the next thing that happens is that we deny or reject the change. Nope, that is not going to happen. This phase of distrust might last for a few seconds or for much longer, but we have to believe that a change is real before we can make any progress. Once we understand that this change will occur, we get to step 3, discomfort. This is when we feel the hard or new or unknown parts of the experience and we don't like it. Discomfort is, well, really uncomfortable. As soon as we start to look for ways to manage our discomfort, boom, now we're on the upswing, because the 4th step is choices. The minute we realize that we can have some control, we start to build resilience. And those choices lead to step 5, engagement. Engagement doesn't mean happiness or even lack of frustration. It simply means we're trying to actively take part in improving our situation. Engagement leads to the last step, reunification. Reunification is the act of rejoining a group, a relationship, or finding our own positive attitude. When we truly manage a change and move on with it, we grow, get closer to our goals, and become more of the person we want to be. You can learn to work through this resilience cycle faster and easier, and to help the people in your life do it too. I've got 5 minutes of strategy for whomever you want to help. Is it you? Is it kids, teens, or young adults? Is it your work team or organization? Or is it an entire community? Click the button below that best describes who you want to strengthen, and let's get started.
All right, folks, I am super excited that she is with us here live. Please welcome Dr. G, Deborah Gilboa. Hi, my friend. How are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm great. And I've been so interested in everything I've learned from you so far today.
Well, that is very kind of you to say. Debbie and I know each other now for a couple of years going back, since we're both out of Pittsburgh. We're both professional speakers. We both work with a lot of organizations, especially in healthcare. And it wasn't that long ago that I encountered the video on her website that you just saw. And as soon as she started walking through the resilience cycle, I thought this is such a phenomenal roadmap for bosses, for leaders to understand how they need to walk their team members through change. Change is constant. So why don't we start out, Debbie, when you think about that cycle and the steps that you just outlined for us in that video, what role do leaders play in actually helping their team members move through it?
It can be easy to feel like, that's that person's process. What am I doing in their process? However, you can either make things smoother for them, or, and this very often happens when you are the person who is the messenger of change as the boss, you can be perceived as the obstacle. And that perception, and you just talked about this, those negative boss beliefs, announcing change can, I think you'd back me up, can really quickly switch someone into negative beliefs about their boss. You know, I thought things were okay. I thought you liked me. I thought we were fine. And then you come along with change. And because the first thing our brains do is perceive loss, then you're causing me loss.
Yep. We talk a lot about that lack of stability that comes with when change shows up, right? And so many of the leaders who are participating today have just endured 3, 4, 5 months of some of the most intense, constant change that a group can be asked for. I've talked to leaders who said, I am having to change information and give different directions to my team literally multiple times a day. You know, so it's been a really intense time. I know that you know that, and it creates so much fear and instability for folks. Where should leaders start when the time comes for them to try to support their teams as they move through change?
The 3 things that people need from you when they're going through this process is sort of intuitive, but I just want to lay it out very clearly. The first is actually empathy. And there's a big obstacle to giving anyone empathy for their feelings of loss or distrust or discomfort when you are the person who told them, and maybe even had the idea to institute the change that you're announcing. Because it feels like if I show empathy for what you're worried about losing or what makes you uncomfortable, what's hard about this, that I'm saying it's a bad idea. And that's not true. If you think about it with a kid, that, you know, in a parenting situation where you say, you know, you're not going to be able to go to that birthday party because you behaved badly, or because it's, you know, you have a fever. As soon as the child says, that's terrible, you feel like, well, if I tell you that I agree it's terrible, maybe I should change my mind. And in a collegial situation, you can go through that same thing. You can think, I'm going to give them a reason to think I'm wrong about this change if I endorse or agree with the difficulty that they're having. And I just want to say shenanigans. Have empathy. There are no rules about feelings. There are rules about behavior in our society, in our workplaces, but not about feelings. Your feelings are yours. So if I tell you that we are upgrading to a new copier, and you tell me that you are experiencing real grief because you have a personal relationship with our old copier, which sounds like hyperbole, but if you've ever worked in an office, as we both have, you know it is absolutely not. People name
You mean
things.
I have to learn a whole new copier?
And I love Bessie. What are you going to do with Bessie?
Right.
So if I say, I see that you're feeling some grief about that, and I'm sorry you're feeling that way, that's hard. You're actually helping them. You're greasing their wheels to get past that loss, or at least move a game piece further along on that cycle. The second thing that people need, actually one of our participants today mentioned it in one of her comments about what she was going to try and do differently. And that was to express appreciation.
Yes.
Gratitude and appreciation really, and I'm going to use a medical term, defibrillates the situation. It shocks people into looking at it a new way. And I don't mean like we should all be grateful that we're here today. Should and grateful don't go well together. Don't get into the shoulds. Find something authentic that you appreciate about this person, whether it's their honesty in telling you how they're feeling, whether it's that even if they didn't give 100%, they showed up and they tried something, or they listened all the way through without it. Whatever it is, it has to be authentic, not patronizing, but gratitude also smooths this road. And then the third thing is clear expectations. And the clear expectations is your opportunity to say, for example, I expect that changing our entire electronic record system will suck. I also expect that we're doing this, and that when, not if language gets people through the distrust, because that distrust is not only, is this a good idea? It's, are we really going to do it though? I mean, really, if I push back hard enough, or if I just wait quietly, or if I just don't help, maybe this change will never happen.
Right. And I love, so these 3 ideas, you have to have empathy, you have to have gratitude, you have to give clear expectations. I really want to point out something very specific that Dr. G just did that I think we fail to do sometimes as leaders. And that is, we have to make those things explicit. You know, I do a lot of training around service excellence and patient experience. And one of the things that we talk about with empathy is that there's only one way to express empathy. And that is, you have to give voice to it. You have to use the language that Dr. G just used. Yes, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way. I'd be frustrated too. The gratitude has to be expressed explicitly. Those clear expectations have to be expressed explicitly. And I think I know the answer to this question, Dr. G, but is once enough?
Once is a great start.
Mm-hmm.
If people have negative boss beliefs about you, once won't be enough. If people have really positive boss beliefs about you, then one expression of empathy may get you to the next day, right? You can use some of that credibility, but because empathy costs nothing and gratitude costs nothing, I wouldn't necessarily spend the boss credibility here. I would give it out plentifully. It's like telling someone you care about that you love them. It costs you nothing and it fills them up.
And it's an unlimited resource, you know, and even if people don't believe you the first couple times you say it, even if it just feels like you're going through the motions, you keep showing up in that way, and we will start to believe it as part of the culture. So what we decided to do, Dr. G, is we put this poll question up for our attendees about your resilience cycle and about the ones that they're struggling with the most. And I know we're starting to get some questions that are coming in. So Rob, why don't we bring you back, and Dr. G, can we turn off our video for a second so that Rob can show this poll about these stages?
Yep, there we have. We asked the question earlier, which resilience cycle stage does your team struggle with most? And most of you guys were able to chime in here, and so we put it up as a pie chart here. Hopefully you guys can see that there. And so we had around 96 people there answer, and it looks like the biggest one is engagement. We have also loss. Oh yeah, we have some more coming in here. Discomfort. So a lot of you guys answered on this, but looking at that pie chart, I don't know if you guys have any insights into that, but this is what our attendees did. And if you still want to answer, the code is 962914. So if you still want a chance to answer there. So these are results of our resilience cycle stage.
Now, what's interesting here is that even though more people are voting, we are still seeing that engagement stage taking up 1/3 of the vote. So Dr. G, why don't we talk briefly about that? And if people want to still vote, we can bring that back in just a second. And I'm going to put this up on my screen so people can see it, right? So you've got your resilience cycle stage, and engagement's near the end of the process, right? Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by engagement and how leaders can be more successful in that stage.
When organizations that I work with feel that where they're struggling most is with engagement, it is almost always because they gave choices rather than asking for choices. One of the key pieces to that choice, and once I start to realize I have choices and I pick one, the act of picking one is engagement. Like I said, it may not be full-throated support. It might not be happiness and puppies and rainbows, but it is engagement. I am engaging with some piece of the new electronic record system or the new copier or the new schedule or whatever it is. But when I drill down with organizations who say they're struggling with engagement, usually the only choices are choices they have given to their staff. There's no autonomy. And one of the keys to internal motivation for adults, somewhat for children too, but for adults, is autonomy. That it's competency, right, and mastery, but also autonomy. So within your structure, within the restrictions and the rules and the guidelines that you must follow, every time you can give an adult autonomy, you're not only giving them freedom of choice, and we know that that feels good, we're showing them respect. And showing them that respect makes them feel more valued because it means we are valuing them more.
So just taking the time to differentiate between telling versus asking, you know, these are not world-changing, profound behaviors that require months of training. These are subtle, slight changes in the way that we disseminate information and we discuss information and change, and the ways in which we engage folks in conversation about that change. It's changing a few words here and there in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Yeah. Often we feel, especially if we're in a boss situation, but we are not the owner or the top boss, we feel like we've been given the choices that we need to present and the choices that we are going to make. And we feel like we don't have the latitude to give autonomy in this situation. But asking for creativity, asking for tweaks, or suggestions, all of that builds engagement, helping people realize that although you, I hope, are an expert in their work, they are more of an expert, a subject matter expert in their piece of the puzzle, and that you really want to hear from them. That's been shown over and over again to build engagement.
Love it. So we've got about 5 minutes left here, Dr. G, and I have a couple of questions that have come in through Q&A. So let's run through as many of these as we can. So Reg has asked, in healthcare, and we had to know this was coming, right? As we adjust to the new reality of post-COVID care delivery, we're changing much of how we have historically delivered care. And it's compounded by the emphasis on virtual leadership rather than face-to-face influence. So how do we as leaders throttle the pace of urgent change, connect more virtually, and ensure capacity and alignment with our teams across the organization? And you have 1 minute to answer that incredibly great question.
Perfect. And Reg, that is a fantastic question. And what I would say is I wouldn't focus on trying to throttle the pace of change. You're trying to save lives. And so that drives the pace in healthcare. But what I would suggest is that you focus on asking one good question, as you've done here, of each of your teams, or if you can pull it off, because I don't know how big your organization is, asking supervisory level to ask one good question of each employee about how they would like support in managing the change or what suggestions they have for the change. Because I mentioned in the video that turn from discomfort, which by the way, you may leave a piece of yourself in discomfort, absolutely, but that piece of you in discomfort or distrust, as soon as you start to ask the person themselves for choices, they are acting in a more resilient way.
Love it. So Michaela asks about advice for when an employee comes to you with a concern, and you don't want to come off as dismissive, but you've analyzed the situation and maybe it's something that doesn't need to be changed or addressed. So for instance, if the employee is continually complaining or they're always bringing up non-existent issues.
That there's something underneath that for that person. And so you don't need to change your boundaries or your rules or your expectations. Your professional expertise says this isn't something worth changing. Maybe it's about your check-in process, or it's about the way if this is a medical setting, the way the provider gets finished with a visit. And you say, so that change doesn't seem to me that it will solve the problem. And then empathy. I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing frustration. I'm grateful that you keep coming to me trying to solve whatever it is that's going on. Would you please, give them a deadline, by Monday, bring me what you think is the underlying issue here and a couple of possible solutions.
Love it. And folks, I hope you are writing down a lot of this. I hope you are taking notes, because Dr. G is giving you some incredible scripting. And I love this idea that you're driving towards something that I actually talk about a lot in training too, which is this notion that sometimes we have to ask people who disagree to commit anyway. Where does that fit in the resilience cycle? And is that something that would create more problems for us, or is it reasonable to do?
Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. I mean, if the fire alarm goes off, everybody's leaving, and it does not matter what you're in the middle of. So you have to, I think, spend that credibility only when you feel it is both urgent and important. If it's not urgent, you can take some time to process with people. But if it's both urgent and important, and it follows the mission of your organization, then you can stand strong in that decision. Anytime you have to do something that is profoundly unpopular, check it against your mission, your reason for your company's being. And if it fits, then you say, I get it. I have empathy for the discomfort. You can even say, this is what's hard about it for me, but ground it in your mission, because by working with you and for you, your employees are endorsing your mission. And you build your credibility by having a fair, strict rule, as long as it's based in your mission. And your popularity may briefly go down, but your integrity goes up. And integrity lasts longer in positive boss beliefs than popularity.
As long as it's worth the battle, right? Like, you know, your idea of you got to pick your battles, right? And so we have some folks out there who are going to make everything a battle, make everything an argument. And sometimes as a supervisor, we might just need to say, this isn't worth spending that capital on.
You don't always have to pick up the rope. The earlier question that we had, you know, somebody's always coming in. And if it's always a tug of war, you can choose not to pick up the rope in certain occasions. Okay, I have time for one more question. And Courtney is asking about
folks who choose not to engage in some of the reflection and management that you're talking about. She says, I've given my employees the area to make their own decisions and given them suggestions I would like to see, but then they choose not to do it. Some employees don't seem to have self-management skills to follow open-ended suggestions, as opposed to actually just giving them actual directions that they need to follow. Help her out, Dr. G.
It's absolutely true that some people's personality thrive on structure. They say, hey, this isn't where I want to spend my creativity, or I really don't know what you're asking and it makes me uncomfortable. Please tell me what you'd like me to do. So that is actually a great negotiation. Ask them for their boundaries. And if they say, please tell me what to do, say, fantastic. I just don't want you to feel disrespected when I don't ask you for your input. And if they say, boy, it would save me time and effort if you didn't ask me, just let me know what the change is going to be, then you have their consent. And in medicine, we think a lot about consent. You have their consent to hand them choices. And then if they struggle with engagement, you can say, okay, that didn't work and this isn't working. What else can we try?
Okay, so we're going to do a couple of things with Dr. G here as we thank her for her time. The first is, I want you to go back to that action planner that we pulled out a few minutes ago, and I want you to write down any new language, new scripts, new actions that you know you need to commit to taking as a result of some of what she just taught us. If nothing else, my hope is that when we are done with this event today and you get the resources next week, you will look more closely at that resilience cycle and think, how do I use that as a step-by-step roadmap for helping my team navigate change? Now, as they're writing this, Dr. G, we are going to give away one of your courses. It's the one about changing a behavior in you. Can you tell us about that course?
Absolutely. This is a course to help adults or older teens, but it's focused on adults, change a behavior, because changing behavior is a skill. It's a muscle that you strengthen. And every time you change a behavior, you become more successful the next time as well as this time. But as a family physician, I talk to people about behavior change constantly, and I help you find your own expertise and what does and doesn't work for you. The course itself would, if you did it end to end, take about 52 minutes, but it's broken up into really short modules and has worksheets and support all the way through.
Why don't we ask everybody to say very nice things about Dr. G in the chat and on Instagram, #BossBetter, and let's thank her for her time today. Debbie, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a blast. Have a great day, everyone.